In this video, I want to cover some basic information about the immune system and how it helps protect you as you move through a world of things that want to make you sick. So your immune system's function is to protect you against foreign invasion. And those foreign invaders are other organisms that are not you and want to use you for their benefit, and you are harmed in the process. So that includes various viruses, bacteria, protozoa, which are single-celled eukaryotic organisms, and fungi. The immune system also can neutralize the toxins that are produced by these foreign invaders. Bacteria especially harm us because they are just giving off toxins or poisons as they go about their daily life. And your immune system takes care of any mutated body cells which, if they were allowed to stick around, could cause cancer. So even though people do develop cancer, your body is fighting off cancerous cells for years before you actually have one that gets established and that your body's not able to take care of. Because mutations do happen, especially in cells that reproduce frequently, and so your immune system kind of cleans up those cells that have gone wrong without you even knowing that you ever had a problem. Here are some examples of the types of disorders that can come from these different bacteria. Our bacteria are from different organisms, so starting with bacteria, an example being E. coli, something you might have heard of in reference to gastrointestinal distress. But all of these diseases over here are bacterial diseases. Strep throat you may have experienced, staph infections, which are a fairly serious type of infection. Food poisoning is typically due to bacteria overgrowth in that food. Tetanus, which hopefully you have a vaccination against, pneumonia, syphilis, these are all caused by bacteria. Virus, herpes simplex, is a very common virus. It causes cold sores as well as a type of sexually transmitted infection. Your colds that we suffer from every season are a virus. Flu is a virus, measles, AIDS, warts are caused by a virus, chicken pox, all these things are virus-related diseases or disorders. Fungi, athlete's foot's probably the most common one, but there are a number of other disorders that you can have, infections on your skin in many cases that are coming from fungi. And then protozoa, giardia, which is found when you drink water that has not been purified. So if you're out walking in the mountains and you drink from a stream, you might pick up some giardia. And so things that cause travelers' diarrhea are coming from protozoa in the water. Malaria also is caused by a protozoa, not a bacteria. So these are just some of the disorders, diseases you may have heard of that are caused by these pathogens, these organisms that are dangerous to us. There are 3 levels of defense that your body has in your immune system to try to keep you from getting sick if you come into contact with any of these pathogens. You have various physical defenses, you have chemical defenses, and then there are the biological defenses, the things that happen by the immune system cells. Some of these forms of defense are innate. They are with us when we are born, and they are nonspecific. They work on any kind of pathogen. There are other forms of defense that are specific to the pathogen, so they are designed to only attack one particular kind of pathogen. Physical defense is our first line of protection. The skin and the mucous membranes that are found outside our body, the skin and the mucous membranes are the membranes inside our mouth and inside our digestive tract, and their job is to prevent the entrance of these infectious agents into the body at all. So as long as your skin is not broken, it is an impenetrable wall against those bacteria, but you get a cut or a scrape, and all of a sudden you're open to infection. You also have physical defenses in the various fluids that can wash things away. So tears can wash bacteria out of your eyes. Parts of your body that are open to the outside, like your urinary system, because your bladder exits to the outside. Every time you pee, that urine is washing things away. Sweating also can wash bacteria off the surface of your skin. So these are your physical defenses. Then we have various chemicals that are part of our body system that also destroy pathogens. And those are enzymes, various acids, and proteins, specific proteins. So they take care of these pathogens before they become a problem. There's a particular enzyme called lysozyme, which is found in saliva and in tears, and that will take care of bacteria. So that works against bacteria, so that if any bacteria get in your eyes or get in your mouth, then the lysozyme enzyme can break those bacteria down. The high level of salt in our sweat also kills bacteria on the skin. The stomach acid that we have not only digests proteins, but it digests any bacteria or viruses that we may have swallowed. Our skin oil actually is slightly acidic, and so that also will inhibit bacteria growth. And then we have proteins that are produced either by the cells of the immune system or they're just found in the bloodstream, and this can also inhibit the growth of the pathogens. I have this picture of a turkey vulture over here on the right because their digestive system is remarkable in destroying bacteria. So even though they feed on carrion, on dead animals, by the time that goes through the digestive system and comes out as poop, basically the poop has been cleaned up. And so their systems are very good at taking care of bacteria, and they have an important role in ecosystems because of that, because they basically are cleaning up and destroying harmful bacteria. We don't often see turkey vultures around here, but we see black vultures that look basically the same, but they have a black head. And so when you look at them, they're not the most beautiful birds as they are in the road eating roadkill, but they are actually helping get rid of potentially harmful bacteria by their very strong acid in their digestive system. And then we get down to the biological defense. And so your immune system has particular types of cells that are found in the blood and in the lymph nodes, which you may have heard of as lymph glands. If you have swollen glands because you have a respiratory infection, you actually have swollen nodes. Glands, more officially, is the word for a part of your body that produces a hormone, and these lymph nodes do not produce hormones. And then you also have a system like your blood vessel systems that are made up of vessels that carry lymph, which is the clear liquid that is part of your plasma. And so you actually have like two systems of tubes in your body, one to carry your blood and one to carry lymph, because plasma will move out of the blood vessels and needs to be collected out of the tissues. If you've ever had a blister, that clear liquid that's inside the blister is lymph. The immune system cells are a special type of blood cell, and so we typically call them white blood cells or lymphocytes because, again, they're part of the lymphatic system because they're found in lymph nodes and in the lymphatic vessels. And there are many different types of white blood cells or lymphocytes. These cells, like all blood cells, are made in the bone marrow, and then they mature to their full, fighting strength, either in bone marrow or in the thymus. And so on the diagram, we see some of the places where we find these immune system cells, find these lymphocytes. So we have our various lymph nodes found in, this is a very small indication of how many we have, but we have lymph nodes in the throat, there are lymph nodes underneath your arms, there are lymph nodes inside your small intestine, which are called Peyer's patches. We have lymph nodes in the groin area, and in all of these places, it is where if you got a cut on your arm and bacteria is coming into your arm, it would have to pass through this region under your arm before it could enter sort of the main part of your body where all your organs are. And so the lymph nodes are there to grab the bacteria and to kill them before they get into the main part of your body. And so the various lymph nodes are set up in places that are entrance points of your body. Some of the lymphocytes actually can move through body tissue, so they can kind of circulate around and squeeze in between cells, so they're always on patrol. Here's just a picture of some of the cells of the immune system, just a few of those many, many cells. Your bone marrow, of course, is where it is being, the different cells are being produced, and then some of them mature there, and others go on to the thymus to mature. Macrophages are cells that use phagocytosis to surround bacteria or surround bits of cell debris and clean things up. We have various fighting cells, like the neutrophil are the cells that you tend to have in an infection, working very hard to defeat a place where you have an infection. And so the white pus you see when you have a skin infection, that is the dead bodies of neutrophils that have done their job trying to kill off bacteria. Other cells I'll be talking about in a minute are the T cells and the B cells, two special types of lymphocytes that are involved in actively protecting us against pathogens. Our biological defense, or defense by these immune system cells, come in nonspecific and specific varieties. So the nonspecific defense kicks in when pathogens are detected or if tissues are damaged. You also sometimes see this happen because damaged tissues usually end up having pathogens being able to get in. We have inflammation occurring, and inflammation is not a bad thing. Too much inflammation can be, but inflammation itself increases blood flow to an area, which will bring in these immune system cells, these lymphocytes, to do their job, bring in more blood, to bring in nutrients, to feed those lymphocytes as they're working, just make the place more spacious, more easy to get around. You also often have fever when you've had a pathogen in your body, and the fever, by warming things up a little bit, makes these immune cells of your own work faster, and on the same time it inhibits the growth of bacteria. So it speeds up the good guys and slows down the bad guys. And then as part of this nonspecific defense, we have various lymphocytes that come in that have particular jobs. There are cells known as natural killer cells who can destroy cells that have a virus in them or cancer cells. The cells that eat phagocytic cells, like the macrophages I mentioned, and some of these other types of cells you can see, are all ones that can engulf and destroy foreign material. And then cells, some of your lymphocytes, the basophil and the mast cells, two other types of lymphocytes, actually increase the inflammation and attract these phagocytic cells to the area so that they can find and eat the pathogens or to clean up the cell debris. Specific biological defense happens in response to a particular organism. So the non-specific defense happens for anything that happens, any kind of pathogen that enters the body. But certain immune cells, our T cells and our B cells, are programmed to respond to cells with a particular antigen on the cell membrane. So they are specific. And there are many, many T cells and B cells that are made early in your life. They are made really before you hit adulthood, and then they just stick around forever. And they are come in many different varieties, so they can match up with different antigens on invaders. Antigens, we have a little illustration down here, they are proteins that are sticking out from a cell, and they label a cell. Label the cell as either belonging to an organism, being part of the self that belongs to that organism, or it's a foreign invader. I see there should be an R, not invaded. Foreign invader. Incidentally, the blood types that you may be familiar with, A, B, and O, are determined by antigens on the red blood cell. So if you are type A, receiving type B blood, your body sees that as a foreign invader and will attack those cells, which is why you always have to match blood types if you're going to receive blood. These T cells and B cells that have been designed to match up with a particular antigen are inactive until their antigen is detected in the body. So they basically are waiting there. They may wait their entire life and never get used, but they are ready and waiting for when you need to get rid of something that has that antigen, has that marker in the outside of the cell. Once these T cells and B cells are activated, they can do things like destroy the infected cells. So we have the natural killer cells that will just sort of kill any particular cell that seems to be infected. But a T cell will destroy a cell that's infected with a particular antigen or a particular substance that has that antigen. The activated B cells can produce antibodies, which are proteins that attach to the pathogens and make them easier to destroy. They can inactivate those pathogens, make that bacteria, for example, less likely to be able to reproduce, and kind of clump them together and mark them as something that needs to be killed for the macrophages and other immune system cells. Once your immune system cells are activated, it takes about 7 to 10 days for the full defense to be organized the first time it happens. But there are memory cells that are left in the body after that infection ends and the body kind of gets rid of the extra cells they don't need. There's always some memory cells, memory T cells and memory B cells that stick around, so that if that same pathogen with that antigen shows up a second time, that second response is much faster. In fact, only 1 to 2 days. You may not even know you were exposed to that pathogen. Your body responds so quickly you never feel sick. And so this is why we use vaccines, because vaccines are basically producing these memory cells by exposing you to the antigens or to a killed form of a virus or a bacteria so that your body makes the system or gets the system all set up so that it can respond in a very short period of time if it ever runs into that pathogen again. So here's just a flow chart showing the various steps. Bacteria, here on the left, they are usually detected first by a macrophage, which eats one, and then takes that antigen and uses it to activate the T cells. So we have cytotoxic T cells, which can destroy the bacteria directly. And then we have helper T cells, which go and activate our B cells, which make these antibodies that will attack the bacteria. In the case of viruses, basically bacteria live on your cells and produce poisons, but viruses live in your cells, so they infect the cells of your body. And by doing so, they put the antigen, the virus antigen, on the cell membrane of that cell that belongs to your body. And so that kind of appearing on the cell is saying this cell is wrong. It's a notice to your body that something's going on, and that will cause your cytotoxic T cells, your cell-killing cells, to get in there to destroy the virus cells before more viruses can be made, and also activating the helper T cells, which activate your B cells, which make antibodies. And so you've got these two types of specific immune cells that match this antigen. You see in both cases we have antigens. It is these signpost or marker on the outside of the cell that says we need a particular kind of defense, a particular cell has to be able to respond to this infection. After you have been exposed to a pathogen, then you develop an immunity. And you can have an innate or a natural immunity provided by the defense systems naturally present in the body at birth. Some people are just more resistant, genetically more resistant to certain pathogens. They don't get sick very easily because their body is very good at responding quickly and fighting it off. But most of our immunity is adaptive immunity, and it's developed because we have been exposed to a pathogen at some point in our life. So after we have survived an infection or we have been given a vaccine, we would have adaptive immunity. We've adapted to that stress and are going to be able then to respond if we are confronted with that same stress in the future. But we can also have passively acquired adaptive immunity. Babies that are breastfed are given some of the immune system components in the mother's breast milk, so that can provide some immunity for something they've never been exposed to. And you can also receive an injection of antibodies, and if you traveled to another country, you may have received an injection that will give you an antibody to kind of protect you short term against a disease such as hepatitis that is prevalent in whatever country you're visiting. Adaptive immunity is specific to a pathogen, and so if the pathogen mutates, the immunity is lost. And this is what happens with flu, why we have a flu vaccine every year, especially for the populations that are more at risk, like people in their over 65 are recommended to get a flu shot every year, because last year's flu has mutated a little bit to become this year's flu, and our body's adaptive immunity, even if we had the flu last year or we got a vaccine last year, it no longer matches. And so the new version of the flu can still make us sick. So adaptive immunity is very, very specific. It can do a much better job at keeping us healthy than our innate immunity, but it is limited by the fact that it's only really looking for one particular pathogen. This chart just shows what immunity does so far as response time. So if we have our first exposure to any particular pathogen, this is the amount of time it takes, as I said, 7 to 10 days before you've got a response that is going to, this is where you would be really killing things off because your immune system is at kind of full alert and you've got lots and lots of cells in your body ready to kill things. Then if you have a reinfection, you have a much quicker response a few weeks after you've had that first exposure. But because of the memory cells, a reinfection years later can have an even quicker response. You can see that this is a much sharper curve. The body is able to produce all of the cells they need to defend against that pathogen very, very quickly. As I said, I want to mention two types of immune system disorders while we're on this topic. Autoimmune diseases means your immune system is attacking your body cells. Auto means self, and so it's the cells that are supposed to belong to yourself are being seen as a pathogen, and they are being attacked by your immune system. Type 1 diabetes is a type of autoimmune disease where the body attacks cells in the pancreas that make insulin to the point that they're all destroyed. Rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and inflammatory bowel disease are also diseases that you may have heard of that are autoimmune diseases. Your own immune system is attacking itself. And then there are immunodeficiency diseases, and this is the immune system is deficient in some way. It cannot properly defend against pathogens. Immunodeficiencies can be caused by genetic mutations, by certain infections, by drugs, or chronic disorders. AIDS, which is caused by the HIV virus, is an immunodeficiency because this virus kills your T cells. And when you don't have any T cells in your body, you cannot respond specifically to pathogens. And so people who die from AIDS are dying from an infection of something else. They're not dying from the HIV virus directly. They're dying because a pathogen that normally would not cause a problem is not able to be fought off because part of the immune system is actually missing. Because you only make T cells when you are very young, if you lose your T cells as an adult, you don't make any more, which is why HIV virus is such a deadly virus. Nowadays, we've got drugs to keep the virus from reproducing, but when AIDS first appeared, people who were infected usually had died within 5 years, killed them very, very quickly because they killed off all the T cells. And then if you have had a organ transplant, you have put foreign cells in your body because that organ came from somebody else. And so you need to take immunosuppressant drugs so that your body will not attack your transplant, but again, it will shut down your own immune system to some degree and making you more susceptible to get infections. So that people who have transplanted organs do have to be very careful about how they expose themselves to other pathogens. And then certain chronic disorders such as diabetes or cancer can just suppress the working of your immune system in general and make you more likely to have a less good defense and more likely to have problems with different types of pathogens. So hopefully this overview gives you a better idea of how your immune system works. It's really very complicated. There are about 30 different types of cells and proteins and other substances that are involved, and that's more complicated than I'm going to go into here. But it is, a very important system. It is something that is working for you all the time because there are pathogens in the environment that you are running into 24/7.